important discussion as well as timely discussion in the context of current developments on one hand, as I'm sure we will be hearing more about in the course of this webinar, as well as, of course, under the European Green Deal and the Fit for 55 deliverables. So before we kick off today's event, I would like to take the opportunity to thank hosting MEP Ms. Kumpula-Natri for taking the lead with regards to the organization of this event. And a warm thanks goes out at the same time to all speakers and colleagues from the European Commission's Group of Chief Scientific Advisors, as well as SAPIA for kindly co-organizing this webinar. At the same time, I would like to turn to our audience. As we want to have a discussion as interactive as possible, I would like to invite participants to send us your questions during this event. For that, you can use the Q&As box at the right-hand side of the platform, choosing the All Panelists option. Within your question, please make sure to also note the speaker to whom the question is best addressed, so that on behalf of the Secretariat, we can facilitate a fruitful discussion to follow. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today. And with no further ado, I'd like to provide the floor to Ms. Kumpula-Natri.
Thank you, Ilias, and thank you, Secretariat, and all the speakers who provided their help for organizing this seminar and taking part here, SAPEA and then the group of scientific advisors. It is needed, all the courage is needed at the moment. As we said in the invitation letter, if energy efficiency was a fuel, it would be the single largest source of energy in the EU. And it is not something that we are dependent so much of the import, because that is namely the challenge of today. The figures that are really horrifying, that we are depending on the imports for the gas of 90% of the consumption of the oil, which is still so much needed and used in the transport. It's 97%, and hard coal is 70%. And then alone, this horrifying situation that there is war in Europe and Russia who's attacking, killing civilians, really distorting the order of our security and democratic structures. We are depending on the gas import from Russia, around 45%, 25% of oil, and 45% of coal imports. I repeat this because this should shock us that we are still here, even there was some nice papers on the energy dependency that should be cut off or should be strengthened our resilience and our not dependency, so that increase our energy strategic autonomy. And we have not delivered that well. But today we talk about the energy efficiency from the science advice perspective, and I don't want to be that gray and dark only in my opening words, but remind us that we have reached something. The earlier goals were to reduce primary energy demand by 20% until 1990, and so far we have been successfully to reduce it more than 30%. But unfortunately, some of the low-hanging fruits are already picked up, and then we need science to help us to go further. As we will at the same time look at the energy dependency and cleaner energy sources, we cannot miss a month, I won't say even years, but miss a month to think how the energy efficiency can be a part of this puzzle that is in front of us. We count for the months before the next winter, so that EU can promise energy safety and affordable energy for all its citizens and people, and also small companies are dependent on the energy prices. But at the same time, how much can we do with the energy efficiency? There is negotiations and deadlines completed for the amendments on the energy efficiency directive, energy performance in the building directives, and even I am negotiating the ETS, and we talk about the conditionality for industry, how they get the free allowances according their energy performance. So a lot of tools are to be used in the years to come but how do you see it from the science perspective? Welcome all the speakers on behalf of our very active intergroup in the European Parliament.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kumpula-Natri, for setting the scene with regards to today's discussion and being aware of the fact that we are running 10 minutes late in terms of timing due to technical issues currently resolved. I would like to seamlessly transition to our next speaker, who is Ms. Joanna Drake, the Deputy Director General of DG Research and Innovation. Ms. Drake is in charge of implementation, impact, and sustainable investment strategies. Previously, Ms. Drake also acted as Deputy Director General at DG Environment, overseeing the coordination of resource efficiency policies. So, Ms. Drake, it's with great pleasure to have you with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the floor, and thank you also, MEP Kumpula-Natri, and also the Parliamentary Intergroup, the very active group on climate change, biodiversity and sustainable development, for today's event and for enabling this window of good discussion on this very hot topic. I also would like to thank very much from the heart to the group of Chief Scientific Advisors and SAPEA, because they also have had a hand in organizing this important activity and to discuss also scientific advice and to give their scientific advice on the very vital topic of energy efficiency with the Parliament. As Commission, of course, we recognize very much the vital role that research and innovation has in achieving the Green Deal agenda. We all know this. It is an ambitious goal, climate neutrality by 2050, and in order to get there, we really need not shy away. We actually need to be pushing all the time innovative technologies and also policies informed by the best available science. The use of scientific expertise to inform policy making is, by now, a core European value, and it is rooted in the foundations of liberal democracies and Enlightenment values. My DG Research and Innovation, plays a key role in funding and mobilizing R&I, research and innovation resources at a European level to address and anticipate societal challenges. The Commission established a group, a very important group of scientific advice, and we have a mechanism attached to that group, which we very, I would say, cozily call the SAM. It's the Scientific Advice Mechanism, and this was set up in 2016 in order to support policy-making activities with high quality, timely and independent scientific advice. This SAM consists of an independent group of chief scientific advisors informed by the so-called evidence reviews carried out by the Horizon 2020 funded SAPEA, which means Science Advice for Policy by European Academies, and it's a consortium. Now, this SAM produces already important contributions on key themes to support the work on Green Deal. And I think the key, I would say, word here is independent advice to the political class. And this has been the mechanism through which we have provided advice on several important Green Deal related areas, including the adaptation to health effects of climate change in Europe. That was in June of COVID year 2020. An opinion on sustainable food systems, March of the same year. Environmental and health risks of microplastic pollution in April of pre-COVID 2019. Novel carbon capture and utilization technologies in May 2018. Criteria for assessing the biodegradability of plastics in the open environment, December 2020. And also, very pertinently, June of last year, strategic approach to the energy transition in Europe. It was somehow prophetic, I would say also. How does the Commission use this scientific advice? It is used to inform its policies in research and innovation and also other areas. The SAM works at the request, actually, of the College of Commissioners and feeds into policies, not just in DG Research and Innovation, but across the whole Commission. Their advice on energy transition issues is helping to inform key European Green Deal policy initiatives in this area. For instance, the Energy Systems Integration Strategy or the Renovation Wave, both launched in 2020. This is a vital part of our plan to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions in Europe by 2050 and to make European economics sustainable. SAM is currently working now on the next scientific opinion on strategic crisis management in Europe, which is actually due in June, while an opinion on cancer screening, a topic close very much to my heart because I also double up in the Commission as mission manager for the Horizon Europe mission on cancer. It was published actually earlier this month in March, and I invite you also to have a look at that, as it may lead, hopefully, to some important progress and evolutions in cancer policies in the member states. To conclude, I would like to thank the group of chief scientific advisors and the members of SAPEA expert working group represented today by Professor Nebojsa Nakicentovic, or Naki as we like to call him, and Professor Diana Urge-Vortsats. Thank you so much, and you make us all proud. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jake, for sharing this information, presenting us the work of the European Commission, but also the ways that the Commission uses key scientific advice, of which I'm sure we will be hearing more of in the next couple of minutes. And on this note, I'm very happy to present you our next speaker, who is Dr. Peter Glund, co-chair of the SAPEA Working Group on Europe's energy transition and professor in advanced energy systems at Aalto University in Finland. Dr. Glund has over 40 years of experience in clean energy technologies, systems and policies, and he's active in senior roles in various European Union initiatives of energy. So Dr. Glund, it's with great pleasure to have you with us today to an intervention that I think we're all very much looking forward. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the very nice introduction, and also thank you for the invitation to present some of the key results from the SAPEA report related to energy efficiency. So let me just share my slides with you and just give you a view on some of the key questions and key answers that the SAPEA working group has provided. But as a starting point, it's good to maybe quickly revisit how the science advice mechanisms work. There's two important channels to that. One represented by SAPEA, which provides the evidence review report on a subject, state of the art of the science, so to say, independently by scientists. That feeds into the science chief scientific advisors group, who then provides a scientific opinion. So those two kind of documents, in our case, which we call the energy transition report, and then the scientific opinion by the chief scientific advisors. That's the advice which goes then to the commission. And today I'm presenting the main outcomes from the evidence review report by the SAPEA on the systemic approach to the energy transition in Europe, which also includes a lot of things on energy efficiency, which is the main topic today. Now the question, the SAPEA, which was put about a few years ago, it was the question that is, how could the European Commission facilitate, accelerate the transition in Europe toward clean energy and to the Green Deal, based on the knowledge that we have on the energy transition pathway, the different limitations, the particularities in the member states, etc. Basically say what is possible, what is not possible, which is a technical question, of course. Then the question is, what factors would attribute the success of such a transition, which is very much about economics and policy. And finally, the question is how to get the support of the population for such a big change that we need when we speak about energy transition, which definitely is a social question. So we had to tackle from the technology point of view, from the economy point of view, policy and social science, meaning that the group of the experts working on the evidence reports was a very multidisciplinary one. So that was the starting point that we had. And now the key message that comes out of the report, which is quite thick and of course includes a lot of interesting things, but a few important points is to provide here is that in terms of the pathway to the future in the energy transition, definitely there's many choices that we can do. But altogether, that's maybe not the key point, but the key point that it's a very systemic change, that we have to look on the different perspectives. It's not enough just to look on technology, but you need to look on the different facets of policies, economics, and more importantly than ever, of course, on the social issues as well. Also, what is important when we speak about the regulation and policies is that we have to also link those to European values and to socially just transition. So everybody has to be kept on in such a transition. Now, irrespective of what kind of policy measures we would take, it came out from our group, a very strong message is that pricing of the carbon is of central importance. That is something that if we miss that, it would be difficult with other policies to reach those targets that we set, for instance, for energy efficiency or for clean energy. So these were some of the kind of highlights, and now I just moved to the energy efficiency part. A few observations from the report on energy efficiency. As the co-chair, Mrs. Kumpula-Natri told, energy efficiency definitely is the largest energy source that we have in the society, and empirically looking historically over less than 20 years. Indeed, energy efficiency have saved about 30% of the prime energy, mainly coming from the building sector, but also industries, transport has made major improvements, whereas in services, we haven't maybe been that good, but altogether, a very important and impressive result. Looking forward now into the future, what can we do? Some of the latest scenarios that we have on the final energy demand in Europe shows that the baseline is quite constant over the years. So the energy wouldn't increase or the demand wouldn't increase or decrease, but there's also opportunities through new technologies, new services and new policies to really achieve a major reduction in energy demand, halving the energy even by 2050, which definitely would require much stronger policies than we have today. Without stronger policies, even the science would say that, yes, this is possible, but without policies, we wouldn't reach those targets. Albert scenarios, we could say that reducing energy demand has many important positive effects on the energy transition, not only reducing the cost of the transition. That's clear that energy efficiency will reduce the energy transition cost. It will also open up more supply options. And this is important that less energy use will give you more options. And that's indeed also will contribute to much better integration of the renewables. And there's, of course, other impacts that we will have there too. We observed that in terms of the scenarios that have been presented for Europe, we haven't seen really a low energy demand scenario yet be presented, though it's a discussion globally that this may be very important. So focusing on the final energy demand, how much can we reduce? This question is still something that we would need some shedding light on. Also, when we speak about the measures in the future, and something I will highlight in a few seconds, is that we should embed these policies, of course, to the big transitions that we have in the society. Technological transition, for instance, is the digitalization. We should capture the energy efficiency improvements there, and also social transitions, where think about social media and people being more connected to technologies with ICT gives also the huge opportunities for energy savings. When we speak about energy efficiency, let's not also forget the rebound effect. So some of the energy efficiency improvements may be lost because people may use more energy when they save energy and have more money for spending to other activities. So how to tackle with rebound effects in an effective way? We think that carbon pricing may actually be a way to avoid some of the adverse rebound effects that we may have in energy efficiency. So that's what carbon pricing has. So it's very essential for any policy, but also energy efficiency. It could help to mitigate some of the rebound effects that we have. Now let's just very briefly look on the opportunities that the SAPER group identified in reducing energy demand and improving energy efficiency. We recognize that the efficiency improvements in the future with best practice technology that we will have may be harder to achieve. And also the innovations will be harder in the sense that in many areas like heat pumps or other thermal technologies, we're reaching the thermodynamic limits. So the limits of the theory are being approached. So meaning that we should look more on new technologies also, new innovations that provides maybe a larger pool of energy efficiency opportunities. Digitalization, definitely, but also sharing economy and other consumer awareness activities may have positive effects on energy efficiency, but also adverse effects. So think about digitalization on the electricity that we need for servers, more electricity, huge amounts of electricity. Those have to be counteracted and balanced by measures which decrease energy efficiency. That is, for instance, smart buildings, smart technologies that link the consumers better to, for instance, energy use, to understand how to reduce their energy consumption, or better automation of buildings and transportation, which definitely would also provide energy efficiency gains. So new trends may have adverse or positive effects on energy efficiency, but we need to be aware about those and definitely try to have policies more on the positive side here. Linking energy efficiency to systems is important. For instance, urban systems, looking on buildings as systems, not as building parts, not looking on, let's say, for instance, better windows or better insulation only, but as a building as a whole, enables us to reach much easier and much cheaper zero energy levels. So this goes more holistic. Systems view is very important also when we think about the energy efficiency. Also, we think that expanding energy efficiency to other areas, food systems, would be, as an example, important. So we need to maybe broaden up the traditional energy demand, energy efficiency sphere to new areas where energy efficiency and energy demand requires opportunities could be captured. Now with our economic and regulatory aspects, even highly potential energy efficiency means may remain unused. And that's why we look also on regulation and different economic measures to enable the energy transition. In case of transport and buildings, which is of course central areas in energy efficiency, we've seen so far the regulation that we have in place in Europe haven't negatively intervened with other economic incentives. So there hasn't been redundancy, so to say, with the different measures. So that's a pretty good sign. But what we have some questions within the group with the economists is indeed, as many say, that the carbon pricing solely alone could be the solution also in energy efficiency. And some people say, well, it has to be complemented with regulation. There's still some blind spots in the market and regulation and in the society, which needs regulation. So there's some question about balancing. How much regulation would we need in addition of the European emission trading system, for instance, for the ESR? Or would it be enough just to put buildings and transport sectors as a new sectors to the ETS? Some say that, yes, we need a combination of that, but very difficult question in many ways from the economic theory point of view. Having said that, one area is for sure that low-income households, that's need a special attention because they don't have the capital and cash flow for the improvements that are needed and which improvements may be very important for energy efficiency actually, for instance, in buildings. And that means also that how we finance and how the financial institutions finance the low-income households would be important. This would be part of the social just transition, which the group emphasizes very much. So in addition, there's also the question about that we should also maybe quantify the potential for energy efficiency in buildings, transport, and services, update those figures as well as we have in Europe because of the new technologies, new approaches that we see all the time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the final comment comes from the social science point of view. And then we have also a strong consensus that in some way the behavioral issues haven't been adequately addressed by the policies. And there's a misalignment with policy and consumer behavior. And for instance, we could think that behavioral economics type of tools may be very important for energy efficiency improvements in household, but there are still many ways missing. We also feel that the consumers may not have adequate information about or price signals on energy efficiency, for instance, from the electricity bills. And there's also distortions in the market, which the consumers can't understand, and in a way blurs the situation for energy efficiency. And in that sense, clear policies on that side would be also important. Altogether, what we think here is important to make consumers, which are in the center of the energy efficiency, make them active participants of the energy transitions as consumer lifestyles. That affects so much, actually. They say this half of the energy in some way. So aligning consumers with the policies and making the consumers to a kind of polycentric policy approach, making them parts of this transition may be important. Then have a very kind of let's say top-down approach. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to present the results from SAPEA, and I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lund, for highlighting the need for a holistic, systemic approach to the energy transition in Europe, but also concrete ways and opportunities towards achieving that. On this note, I would like to welcome our next speaker, who is Mr. Nebojša Nekičenović, Deputy Chair of the Group for Chief Scientific Advisors to the European Commission, a group that provides independent scientific advice to the EC to inform its policymaking. Mr. Nekičenović is also the director of the World in 2050, a global research initiative that supports the implementation of the United Nations 2030 Agenda. Mr. Nekičenović, I think it would be very interesting for the audience also to hear from you, specifically why is efficiency so important as a lever for resolving major energy challenges facing Europe and the world as well. So thank you for being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction and also for the invitation to this intergroup webinar. Delighted to be here. Yeah, I will continue the discussion about the science advice for the energy transition in Europe, and there is no doubt that efficiency plays a central role, as you have heard from the other speakers. Doing more with less is the key. And I would also add to that sufficiency. That means not wasting energy, and Peter referred to the possibility of the low demand futures. I'm showing you the cover pages of the two reports that Peter already flagged. On the right is the evidence review report of the SAPEA, and on the left is the science advice report of the group of chief scientists, and you can download both reports from the European Commission website. Let me just continue the discussion about the SAM process, scientific advice mechanism of the European Commission. And I just want to, since the previous two speakers also spoke about it, I'll be very, very quick. I just wanted to show you how the flow of the work looks like. So on the left, you have the major challenges facing Europe and the world. For example, how can we achieve the Green Deal and Fit for 55? Then also the digital revolution, health in the days of pandemic, and we don't even need to mention the tragedy of the war in Europe. And so together with the Commission, a scoping paper is formulated of how to tackle one of the specific topic. And Peter has shown you one of the questions, scientific questions on the energy transition from the scoping paper. And the three independent groups that Joanna explicitly mentioned, I think this is really important that the three groups are independent of each other, the group of advisors, SAPEA, and a very able secretariat at the Commission in the DG on research and innovation. Now, after the SAPEA produces the evidence report that's in the middle of the screen, we take that as the basis for drafting the scientific opinion, and we also go to a review and consultation processes, for example, stakeholder meeting, and then both reports, in our case on energy transition, were published last June, hopefully can then inform the policy on such a critical topic as energy that requires immediate action. So that's just briefly a background of how the process looks like. Let me show you who are the chief scientific advisors. We are a group of 7, and I would also like to recognize here Karina Keshki Talo and Rolf Hoyer, who were on the last group of chief scientific advisors and have worked on this scientific opinion with the rest of us. So let me go to the substance. We made 3 major recommendations and 1 general that I would like to start with. Let me call it recommendation number 0. And it is that EU energy policy should be clearly aimed toward achieving climate neutrality and sustainability and not leaving anybody behind, which is now essential in these difficult days of skyrocketing energy prices. And we also suggest, and Peter referred to that, to use a systemic and a holistic approach, because it is important to maximize synergies and avoid multiple trade-offs and barriers that we have across all of the dimensions of the challenge, from technologies to regulatory and market measures to social and behavioral changes, and perhaps those are the most difficult. And if you look on the right, is a possible way of looking how the Fit for 55 package might be achieved, and you can see that requires a Hercules event to making Europe the first climate neutral continent by the middle of the century. It requires huge action everywhere, and this is why our 3 recommendations are directed toward achieving this great goal and making energy affordable for everybody. So our recommendation number 1 is to develop flexible and efficient and resilient energy systems. And I think this is really essential in these difficult times, efficiency and resilience, to provide clean, accessible, and affordable energy services. And for that, we will need to integrate decarbonized energy sources, further electrification of the energy system, and also use of the hydrogen. So research and innovation is critical for achieving these transformations, in particular for efficiency, and circularity is a part of that. But this will not be done without investment. So we need large investments in the new technologies, from generation and transmission all the way to end use. And I think end use is perhaps the most critical, as Peter has mentioned. And for that, we need end use solutions, such as production on site, and also efficient devices like heat pumps or electric vehicles. All of those can multiply the efficiency by perhaps a factor of 3 at the end use. So they're really crucial. And let me show you a historical example how big the efficiency improvements can be. Here you see in the middle some of the analog and early digital devices for communication and telecommunications. And they together need about 450 watts of energy, as you see in the blue circle. If you compare that to a smartphone, it needs 100 times less energy and can provide more services. And the phones have diffused in 30 years throughout the world, including people who do not have access to electricity. So as we look forward, this kind of disruptive technologies can help achieve the goals of Fit for 55 and increase the energy dependence on imports. I think this is critical in these days. So our recommendation number 2 is to recognize the roles of all actors and stakeholders in creating a kind of inclusive and participatory active environment. And I would like to stress the notion that this environment should not just support low carbon choices by everybody, but also make them a choice number 1, the preferred choice. So intensifying energy efficiency is really essential. And I mentioned at the beginning, I think we need also the notion of sufficiency, not to waste energy, but to provide energy for everybody, in particular people excluded today. Support of direct participation and innovation must be a part of that for all stakeholders. And we recommend to start that even at the household level, going all the way to the European level and also international, as this is a global challenge. Europe does not stand here alone. Now, the carbon prices, for example, will generate revenues, whether through auctioning of the permits or whether through the carbon tax itself. And we suggest that the necessity to redistribute the additional revenues to the low-income groups, people who are endangered, who cannot afford energy nowadays, and to promote sustainable energy development. And I think this is really crucial. So we have also, to end of the last year, issued a statement on energy prices, in particular, because the energy prices were skyrocketing. endangering some 30, perhaps even up to 50 million people who cannot afford to pay energy bills. So we suggest immediate support for those groups, and at the same time using part of the revenues for upfront support to increase the share of low carbon, less import dependent, and more affordable and reliable energy systems. And on the right, you see how, for example, investments in renewables that are a central part of that. The black curve shows you the global investments. They're on the order of about 300 billion US dollars. Peak was in 2017, so a few years ago. And below in the yellow bars, you see the European Union's investments. The good news is they increased about 50% from 19 to 20, but this is still one half of what we did 10 years ago. So this kind of investments are central for achieving efficiency and sufficiency, avoiding air pollution by shift to zero carbon energy sources, and reducing the import dependence at the same time. Now, let me slowly move to our third recommendation, which is on the policy side. We envisage a support of coordinated combination of policies, measures, and instruments, including carbon pricing, as Peter mentioned, as a driving force to shape an effective, consistent, and just regulatory system. So our emphasis is on the combination of the measures. So carbon price is essential, but might not be sufficient. So we will need stronger standards, for example, for emission and in particular energy efficiency, that are rooted in real performance rather than hypothetical idealized tests. And then Peter also mentioned that, I would like to reemphasize it, we need to have a handle on the rebound effect, namely as energy becomes more efficient and more affordable, there might be a tendency to overuse. That means carbon price can also help in that way. So we need to evaluate these kind of trade-offs and make sure that we achieve economic development as well as ecological sustainability. Now, I would like to come toward the end of my brief presentation. This is the last slide, and I would like to use this opportunity to highlight the notion of the new European Bauhaus. I think as an integrative part of the European Green Deal. We had a meeting toward the end of the last year on the Bauhaus, and you can see here a picture from our report that can be also downloaded from the Commission website. So basically, our initiative was about to try to understand and provide a vision of how 10 billion people could live in sustainable, inclusive, and aesthetic or beautiful environment. I think the last thing is also important. It's not enough just to be efficient and sufficient. It has to be done in a beautiful way. And so we provide a research and innovation roadmap of how that could be done that refers to built environment, in particular land use and behavioral change. And this should not be underestimated and is related very much to this end use behavioral changes that also Peter talked about. Just to give you an example, if we build the new cities in the world for the middle of the century, in the same way we have done it in the past, just concrete and steel emissions would exceed the remaining carbon budget of stabilizing the global temperature at 1.5 degrees. And that budget is about 300 to 500 billion tons of carbon. And I'm quoting here 5 recommendations: biogenic carbon storage, so that cities and urban areas become carbon sinks rather than carbon sources today, ending the waste. Circular economy is important to here, the notion of reuse, enhancing biodiversity, and again, engaging people and their communities, central to anticipatory design. And of course, this all needs to be fair and just, and emphasis on empowerment and of people who are disenfranchised today. So this is the end of my brief talk. If something was not clear and we cannot cover it in the discussion, here is my email to send a suggestion or a question. Thank you very much, and I will stop sharing the screen now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nekicenovic, for such informative presentation. guiding us through the key recommendations developed, but also the rationale behind this. This is very much appreciated. And at the same time, I would like to turn once again to our audience, as I would like to remind you that you can send us your questions via the Q&As box at the right side of your screen. Just in doing so, please make sure to note the all panelists option so that on behalf of the Secretariat, we can facilitate a fruitful discussion to follow. So moving on into the agenda of today's event, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Tudor Constantinescu, who is a Principal Advisor to the Director General for Energy in the European Commission. Mr. Constantinescu works on energy priorities and initiatives, notably related to hydrogen and energy storage. And previously, he also led the energy efficiency activities of the Energy Charter. So, Mr. Constantinescu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation today. I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased to see also some known faces and to listen to these interesting presentations. I'll try to be brief, although I have to say there is a lot, and I'm happy to share with you some of the initiatives and activities of the European Commission in the field of energy efficiency, because this is indeed very important. So, the transition to carbon neutrality requires certainly to coordinate a large number of actors, a large number of activities in different fields, and this is extremely important. But energy efficiency is definitely at the core of our energy policies, and I will try to explain briefly also why it's at the core through the concept of energy efficiency first principle. So on the next slide, and thanks again for sharing them. I would like to not to spend too much time because these important things are known and were underlined by energy efficiency and how it helps to decouple from GDP, the energy consumption, and how important it is to have the innovative products. But let me underline that, first of all, there are still 37 million people in Europe who cannot afford to keep their house warm. And now with what we see with the energy prices and with the terrible war in Ukraine, this situation may not get easier. So the challenges here will be even bigger than they were. At the same time, buildings continue to be a very important component. It's not just in buildings, but buildings definitely continue to deserve, and in particular, what I said on vulnerable consumers, even higher attention. And here, not to forget that despite the fact they consume 40% now of the energy at EU level, 80% of that is mainly for heating, cooling, and domestic hot water. So it's clearly an area, and somehow this is also an area in which we have seen that penetration of renewables was much lower in the past. Now, we need to act on all these things, and for the reasons you see here, including now more and more also energy security. And we try at European level to have a consistent package of investments. We need about 275 billion euros per year only for building renovation. But I will speak more about the funding and on the opportunities here. What needs to be understood is that there is a combination of actions, and to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal, we need to act on energy efficiency, on renewables, on transport, on state aid regime, on taxation. And the Fit for 55 package, which came last year, actually helped to put things into this direction with certain initiative legislative. Expansion also is of the ETS. And the gas and the decarbonization package and hydrogen, which came in winter, also to help into this direction. Now, but all this come from a different philosophy, which came with the Green Deal. On next slide, please. Which is basically linked to the concept of system integration. Yeah. So here, why is this so important? Why is this so important for energy efficiency? Because when we published this in 2020, and it came out at the same time with the hydrogen strategy, energy system integration, it's really a new way of looking at the energy system and to plan it and to operate it as a whole across multiple energy carriers, infrastructure, consumption sectors. It needs a system where the different carriers are interconnected and the system is more able to deliver carbon emission reductions in a more resource efficient way. This is very important, and in this context, we tried to look at three main pillars. First of all, it was energy efficiency, no secret. Second is about direct electrification, and we see now this with the heat pumps, for example, how important is this as well to use renewables when possible in this way, and the link to e-mobility. Then last but not least, the use of renewables as a low carbon fuel and to support the carbonization of those sectors which cannot be decarbonized with the electrons. Let's face it, now we have 25% final energy consumption based on electricity. We estimate the share will increase to about half by 2050, but still half of our consumption will be based on molecules. So it will be biogas, but will be also synthetic gas, hydrogen, synthetic fuels. So we'll need to decarbonize this part of the energy system as well to achieve the objective of carbon neutrality, which was launched by our President von der Leyen already at the very beginning of this commission, and this remains more important than ever. It remains more important than ever because now investing towards those objectives, investing towards 55% greenhouse gas emission reductions by 2030 already means to accelerate now, to put more capex, to make more innovative investments towards decarbonization, and also to create jobs and growth in a period which comes just after the COVID crisis, and which unfortunately now is so much affected by the war in Ukraine, just at the borders of Europe. So this is a context in which we came also last year in October 2020, actually, with the renovation wave. Yeah, on the next slide, please. And we tried to look at the key aspects which we need to address in this respect. So basically, with the objective to double the current renovation rate of buildings within the next 10 years. If could change the slide, please. Thank you. And here again, we focus on aspects related to heating and cooling. We give an impetus to the public buildings, and we also look at the energy poverty aspects. So it's clear we need to look more and underpin the climate neutrality objective, to apply circularity more and more in the renovations, and to contribute to European economic recovery and growth through these projects, to protect the right of citizens to affordable, accessible and healthy housing. The renovation wave highlights actually the need also for better information, for more legal certainty, and also for incentives through better widely available energy performance certificates, but also the promotion of building renovation passports and the digital building logo. So public funds will be very important, but it will be not sufficient. So we need to leverage, we need innovative financing instruments, and we need not only smarter and new technologies, we also need smarter and more innovative policies, which are very much in the line of energy system integration, which is very much about innovation in technologies, but also innovation in policies, and in a way we look at the whole energy system to achieve energy efficiency at system level, and not just at one component, as important as that component might be. So this would give certainly more benefits. On the next slide, just to say a few words, because part of this Fit for 55 package, of course, we came with the revisitation of two very important directives, the Energy Efficiency Directive, first of all, and the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And just to say a few words about this, because now we try to have indicative member state contributions to the EU level. We need to strengthen, reinforce energy efficiency first principle, and to, as I said also before, to address the issue of energy poverty and boost consumer empowerment. And all this in a context in which we basically try to move to a more ambitious target as well, from 32.5, which was agreed before, to 36 and 39%. So the 39 and 36% energy efficiency target for correspond for primary and final energy consumption, respectively. And this is equivalent to about 9% energy consumption being reduced in 2030 compared to 2020 reference scenario. So it is a significant effort, and for this we try to, and we aim to have member states more engaged. So this work with the member states is stronger than ever, and they need at member state level to increase to increase the savings of the final energy consumption with 1.5% per year from 2024 to 2030 compared to the 0.8 which we had so far. And also to increase the renovation rate, for example, for public buildings at 3%, and to rely more on the new technologies as well, on digitalization, which facilitates system integration, facilitates different technologies coming into the picture. Here we speak also about the obligation for all the new installed meters to be remotely readable, being for hot water or for energy meters. And at the same time, we speak about smart meters, which both for electricity and gas prove that they can bring benefits, and they can also bring energy savings for consumers. Moving to the EPBD, please, on the next slide. This came a little bit, the Energy Performance of Building Directive came a bit later last year, came in December, on the 15th of December. But while the slide will be coming, I can say it brought a vision of zero emission buildings in order to deliver decarbonized building stock by 2050. And this is very important. We need a higher rate of energy efficient renovations of buildings, and we need these innovations to be based on minimum energy performance standards, starting with the worst performing buildings. And this is really important. Now we define a reclassification of the energy performance of the building stock following common criteria. And the class G will now correspond to the 15% worst performing segment of each national building stock actually, but adapted of course to the national conditions. So we aim these G and F classes to gradually improve their energy performance by 2030 and 2033. We need more reliable, more visible digital energy performance certificates. We also promote the renovation passport, which should indicate the expected savings in terms of energy, greenhouse gas emission reductions, but also what are the steps to follow for cost-effective improvement of buildings. We try also to engage member states along the long-term renovation strategies and to have now more concrete plans and timelines in the national building renovation plans as a clear action, as it is a better, clearer definition on zero emission buildings, which is anchored on nearly zero energy buildings, but which goes now to really have this zero on-site carbon emissions coupled as much as possible with 100% renewable energy. And these things become even more important now with the crisis, with the war in Ukraine, and the fact that we had to rediscover the challenge of being dependent just on our supplier, maybe, or too much on fossil fuels. So these things become more and more important. So therefore, we need measures. We need measures also to phase out the direct use of fossil fuels, and this is an engagement we do for 2037, also not to sponsor anymore with public funds equipment based on fossil fuels. On the next slide, I would like to underline that for new buildings, it's this zero emission building definition, also to look at the life cycle global warming potential, and also the strength requirement in terms of linking, and this is also part of system integration. It's not just a part of gas and hydrogen, but it's also the link, of course, to electricity and the e-mobility, plus a mandatory bicycle parking in the new buildings. In what relates to the existing buildings, which is maybe even the more challenging part, on the next slide, we speak about this more European agreed minimum energy performance standards, the national building renovation plans. If you can move to the next slide, which for which we need to remove obstacles and to remove barriers to renovations. This is really something everybody agrees and is aware. Next slide. Yeah. So, and in this respect, we speak more about the deep renovation, again, about the charging of e-vehicles, in particular in case of major renovation, and stronger provision on removal of obstacles and barriers to renovation. Here we have all kinds of obstacles, we know, not just financial, and we speak about one-stop shop accessible to all building ecosystem stakeholders. So therefore, the member states should focus their financial support also on alleviation of energy poverty. We give a particular focus to social housing and to make sure that we can move ahead into this direction. Finally, and this will be my last slide, where energy efficiency comes now, again, even more important than ever, is a REPowerEU. Now, brought by the crisis and the war and the tragedy in Ukraine, now we need to see also how to reduce, and this was the communiqué in Versailles, to reduce gradually eliminate the dependence on Russian gas and to reduce, in any case, dependence on fossil fuels as we move towards carbon neutrality. And therefore, we need to concentrate even more than before on energy efficiency. This could give already results in short term, but definitely for 2030. We have a number, and this is one thing I want to underline, the European structural funds constitute a really important component for achieving these objectives, and member states should take full advantage under the policy objective 2, which is related to energy, climate, environment. But also policy objective 1, which is more about innovation, about smart specialization, and where energy efficiency and new technologies have to be brought into the picture. Then we have, of course, the recovery and resilience plans, where we see that we have a target of 37%, which translates in about 200 billion euros. And out of this, an important component we see in the plans is dedicated to energy efficiency, about 50 to 55 billion euros. These are public money, so they have to be complemented. And we have also InvestEU, we have the Just Transition Mechanism, by the way, for the regions more vulnerable, like all regions in transitions, but also for islands and so on. We have the Modernization Fund, we have the LIFE program, which are all contributing, the last one more to technical assistance and through more analysis and to identification and addressing structural and organizational obstacles, but still all these dimensions and reskilling at the same time are very under InvestEU, are all important to bring together, and this is what we try in order to address in a holistic approach the challenges for energy efficiency and to provide holistic answers at an issue which is of crucial importance for the energy transition, and even more now in short term for our energy security and for the affordability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Constantinescu, for your remarks, presenting us the work of DG Energy from various angles, connecting the dots with regards to all relevant policies, but also highlighting the importance and timely nature of today's topic. And I would like to right now open the discussion, welcoming some more speakers, starting with Ms. Malgosia Rybak, who is the Climate Change and Energy Director at CEPI, the Confederation of European Paper Industries. Ms. Rybak possesses thorough knowledge of European decision-making process, particularly with regards to energy and climate policies, and also has a great insight on a broad range of circular economy topics. So, Ms. Rybak, it would be with pleasure to hear from you inter alia also on what is needed to support investments in energy efficiency and also how industry can contribute to energy efficiency in the energy system. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Elias. And I think that our contribution is particularly important today because we're one of the few industries. So we already heard about energy poverty. We talked about energy efficiency of buildings, what we can do in our daily lives, but there was very little about the industry. And for those of you who don't know who CEPI is, first of all, I hope that you're going to remember us about after this presentation. But second of all, it stands for Confederation of European Paper Industries. And what that means in practice is that we provide a wide range of renewable and recycled products. And it's not only those that seem to be essential, especially in the times of pandemic, but it's also such as toilet paper, tissue, or packaging. But it grows more and more to provide fossil-free substitutes for textiles and other materials and other products, including, for example, batteries. That's one of the projects of our members. The challenge in our industry, at the core of our industry, is to decarbonize heat. Because to produce paper, the whole process is about removing water. So we start with 90%, 99% of water and 1 to 10% of fibers. And by the end of the process, the aim is to have 90% of fibers and little amount of water. And what that means is that all of our investments are basically aimed at two things. So first is energy efficiency, and this is why we're speaking at this panel today. And another one is how to decarbonize, how to switch to decarbonized fuels. Already today, across the industry, we use renewable fuels, biomass, which are waste and residues either from forest management or from our processes, at the level of 62%. So we're on our way there. And with all the investments and the efforts and looking into innovation, we managed to reduce our emissions and decouple from the growth, which I think that is quite important also in this debate, by 30%. So since the beginning of the ETS, it's more or less 30%. We're going to see the updated numbers later this week for last year, and we're going to see how well we're doing right now. But it's not easy to look for new ways how to improve energy efficiency. There are things that we can do already now. And for example, that includes investing in heat pumps. We're actually working with our colleagues from the association to look into the technical barriers that prevent installing heat pumps in our industry. But today we're focusing in this discussion on policy barriers. And non-technical barriers, starting from policy, but also on lack of knowledge and lack of awareness on both sides, on the technology provider side, but also on the industry side. And what we can do right now in the industry when it comes to improving energy efficiency is, of course, producing using less energy to produce more heat and to produce more steam. Another way is to produce less waste heat. And that in our process, that would mean, for example, making sure that there is less water that is in the fibers that goes into the drying process. Another way is to reuse heat that is being produced within the process. And another way, which I think that it links very nicely with what Tudor was saying about system energy efficiency, you can use this waste heat or excess heat externally. And I think that we have good examples of all those investments in one of our publications that we do every 2 years, Reinvest 2050, where we show real live investments with explaining how much money was put into it and how much CO2 we can reduce. And this reduction doesn't happen only in our industry, but for example, when we use this excess heat externally, we also reduce CO2 emissions outside, and we improve energy efficiency outside of our industry and district heating. Or for example, like in Ghent, we have an example of a paper mill that runs mostly on biomass or renewable sources, and then provides excess heat to the near Volvo plant to heat their painting booths and offices. That means that they don't need to have their own generation or use district heating. They can benefit from CHP, so high efficiency cogeneration on site in our plant. Another example how industry is interconnected and improving energy efficiency is actually Netherlands. So we have a paper mill that uses high efficiency CHP. Actually, high efficiency CHP is widely used in our industry because we need heat and electricity, because the machines that are producing paper are running 24/7. And in the case of Maastricht, it is again the mill that provides the excess heat, the waste heat from the production to district heating. So actually they don't need to produce their own heat, they use our heat to provide the right level to residential areas and heat the buildings. And I think that, yes, we mentioned already a few times during this debate by different speakers that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has changed the energy landscape forever. And that goes from the today high energy prices and how much our industry is struggling to keep up their production, which hasn't stopped during the first lockdown during the pandemic, but now because of the high energy prices, in some places we're forced to take difficult decisions. But it also changed our perspective on how we use energy. And here, I think that I'm going to echo a few of the speakers before, that energy efficiency is one of the keys and is a no-brainer decision when it comes to investments. But it's also, we face some of the challenges when we make the decisions to invest in energy efficiency. I guess it's first and foremost because we are a manufacturing industry. So to redesign the entire process to make breakthrough improvements, that takes time and that takes finances. And here we're talking about investments in research on paper making without water, for example. And this is not going to happen today or tomorrow. But in the meantime, what we can do is, first and foremost, I think the risk investments. So it is about financing. It is about financing what is already available on the market and making sure that in the process of plugging in the new device, the industry is also safeguarded, because it's not something that you take off the shelf. For example, a new CHP system or new electric boiler, like they did in the Netherlands in another mill, and you can just start your production again. No, it takes time. It takes a few weeks to install the new electric boiler, and then it takes a few weeks to adjust your production to make sure that the quality of the paper that you're producing is at the right level. And then it is also something that we were looking at in the context of Energy Efficiency Directive, and especially when it comes to the use of CHP and how it is embedded in the energy efficiency improvements and measures at the member state level. There are some elements that started to worry us. So from our perspective, from the industrial perspective, when we're still waiting for making sure that there is the right amount of renewable energy at an affordable price and the right measures, it is worrying to see some of the direct capping of the CO2 emissions at this stage, especially for the industry, because we are not tweaked the same way. We're not using CHP in the same way. So when it comes to the processes to produce, probably we're going to have places where the heat, we're optimizing CHPs for heat production. We're going to have places where they want to, when they will not have access to renewable fuels for quite some time. We will have places where the mills are also participating voluntarily in demand-side flexibility, and this all affects the direct CO2 emissions, even though they're using high-efficiency equipment. Another one that draw our attention is also connected to that, because the energy efficiency gains should be recognized no matter the fuel that you use. If today parts of our industry, so 1/3 is running on natural gas, we believe that there is a merit to recognize energy efficiency gains there while we're waiting for access to biogas or biomethane, because at some point in the future, we will also need to use them in an efficient way. So these were more policy-oriented, non-technical barriers to energy efficiency. And I think that one of those that we're trying to break ourselves in CEPI is the lack of knowledge gap. So the knowledge gap between the producers of equipment, technology providers, and the industry. And I think that the Energy Solutions Forum that we created 2 years ago is one of the ways in which we bring together the technical knowledge from our industry with those that can actually provide us with the right equipment. And I guess in the context of the Commission communication Repower EU, the heat pumps and the coordination that we do and the conversation that we do on certification, on standardization, some of the solution, and then certification at the later stage is, fingers crossed, a good example of bridging the knowledge gap. And I think that with that, I'm going to end here and see if there are any questions in the chat.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rybak, for highlighting the key role of knowledge and also innovation. There is indeed challenges ahead, but thank you also for looking into the key opportunities as well when it comes to improving energy efficiency, as highlighted during your intervention. So I'm very happy on this note to welcome our next speaker, who is Mr. Quentin de Hulst, Director on Green and Healthy Buildings at the European Copper Institute, the leading advocate for the copper industry in Europe and for copper's crucial role in the energy transition. Mr. de Hulst is a mechanical engineer by training and has long-standing experience in the field of energy efficiency, including 10 years working on EU policies. So, Mr. de Hulst, it's with great pleasure to have you with us today and also hear more from you on where do you see new potential for energy efficiency?
Thank you, Ilias, and thank you, the Intergroup, for organizing this event. So I would like to speak about the potential of energy efficiency at technical system level. It has been mentioned by some speakers before. When we think about performance of a team, like in sport, it's often more than the performance of the individual components of the team. And that's the same with energy efficiency when we think about products, systems, or buildings. So a product is sold individually, it's mass produced, the producer has the responsibility, and the performance can be measured in a lab according to standard methods. So that's well known, and you see a heat pump on the screen. Then we have system. A system is an assembly of components to fulfill a function. So for example, heating. It can be standard or unique. It can be assembled or installed on site, with the installer having the responsibility, or the designer. The performance can only be measured in situ, and the method is not always available. Then we have the building, that is a system of systems. It's unique. The designer and the builder have responsibility, and the performance can only be measured in situ and is also influenced by the occupants, among others. So when we have these different levels with different potential for energy efficiency, we have also different policies to address it. So first, at product level, we have the eco-design or energy label or eco-label that are putting requirements and information at product level for each product category. And that's working very well. It has influenced the energy consumption in Europe very positively over the last years. Then at the building level, we have the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive that has been mentioned already. It established performance requirements at the building level, but it's often a theoretical modeled performance. Then we also have the Energy Efficiency Directive that has been mentioned, where we have obligation at a broader level. And the technical systems, they fall in between, but they are partly covered via the definition of technical building systems into the EPBD, and also via energy management system obligation into the EED. But I would like to show you two examples of technical building systems where there is still potential to better address it into policies, and particularly the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. First, domestic hot water system. So the system that supply hot water to your shower, for example. The energy consumption is influenced by different factors, and the first one is the shower rate. What is the flow of water that is going into your shower? And this is covered by product policy, because we have an eco label that is putting a maximum flow to your shower rate. Then we have the water heater that is also covered by product policy, but you will also have system performance that is important. Then you have the piping system, the heat losses that you have on it, so that are influenced by the length and the insulation. This can only be addressed at system level. And finally, you can have a system for heat recovery on the domestic hot water that can save up to 40% of the domestic hot water just by taking back the heat from the drain, for example, the shower drain, to preheat the cold water. And this efficiency gain can only be addressed at system level. Therefore, we need the EPBD and the technical building system to look at these potential benefits. But then into the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, it says how to calculate the performance or the efficiency of your system. And we can see there that the heat recovery is not considered. So it says that the methodology shall take into account the efficiency of the hot water supply and the insulation, so of the piping system. But heat recovery is missing there, and that's an important potential of 4.5 megaton oil equivalent identified by a study of the Commission. So we need to put this in to have a more holistic consideration of the technical system. And so in the EPBD, you could basically amend the text as you see on the screen to have it included. And then into the standards for the calculation, you also need to integrate this aspect. Another example of a system that can be optimized is the electrical installation. So all the components that ensure the distribution of electricity within a building. And we know today that 2% of the electricity generated in Europe is lost within behind the meter electrical installation. So 2%, that's quite a lot. It's mainly into non-residential buildings. And we know that this can be optimized. We could save half of this electricity, so 1% of the electricity generated in Europe, by optimizing the electrical installations into building. So you can do it in different ways. You can optimize the location of the installation. You can optimize the section of the cable to reduce the losses. You can optimize the load management. You can have a monitoring system into it. All of this can help to reduce the losses on the electrical installation. But how can you achieve that via policies? If you look at product level, it has been studied by in the context of eco-design, where a potential has been recognized for cables, but you cannot regulate cable without looking at the whole system. So you need to look at the electrical installation as a whole, and for this we have a guidance with a standard that is existing for energy efficiency of electrical installations. But this is not addressed by any regulation to encourage the use of it, and that's where the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive can make a change by including electrical installations as a technical building system and pointing to the relevant standard for their dimensioning. So concretely, into the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, we have an article that is defining technical building systems into which electrical installations could be added. So that was a second example to show how technical building systems can be optimized to have more potential for energy efficiency. And when you want to maximize the energy efficiency of technical systems, you need a set of specific elements that can be requirements so that you can introduce, for example, into the EPBD. You need skilled professionals, so like electricians, for example, you need guidance, and we have their standards, and you need to have inspections to check that the design is well done and that the systems are well working. Alternatively, you can also have all of this combined into an energy management system. And that's something that is working very well for industry and mandated by the Energy Efficiency Directive. So as a conclusion, I would like to say that there is untapped energy efficiency potential at technical system level, and this can be addressed. So for buildings, it's via the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. For the industry, it's mainly via the energy management systems requirements within the EED. And for the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, I gave two examples that I would like to encourage to take on board in the ongoing process for the recast on domestic hot water and electrical installations that can be considered there. And this would echo well what is already indicated into the proposed recast, that you need to look at energy performance applied at whole systems rather than only on standalone components, which fall under the scope of the Eco-Design Directive. So this was just to show the benefits of looking at technical system level and some possibilities to address this untapped energy efficiency potential via the EPBD mainly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Hurwitz, for your concrete examples, but also policy recommendations for maximizing energy efficiency for technical systems. And I'm very happy to also provide the floor now to Ms. Verena Bax, who is the Energy Savings Policy Coordinator at Climate Action Network. Within this role, Ms. Bax works for a European energy transition that puts energy efficiency first. Previously, Ms. Bax was also an EU Energy and Climate Policy Officer at BirdLife International. So, Ms. Bax, it would be with great pleasure to hear from you on how can we tap into the energy savings potential of the Energy Efficiency Directive.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation to this event. I hope, oh, sorry, I will put on slideshow now. I hope you can all hear me well. I would like to start with saying that we think that the EU must really look now at its energy consumption, which needs to be tackled and needs to decrease considerably, if not drastically, within this decade. And we can see evidence from the most recent IPCC reports where we really see that there is still a window of opportunity to avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis, but this opportunity is closing fast. So we need, if we want still effective adaptation to come into effect, we still need to have greenhouse gas emissions drop drastically within this decade. So I would like to tell you that now is really the moment where the EU needs to prove its climate leadership, and not only at EU level, but also at global level. And we need to get the right energy transition on track. The energy transition means for us really a bold shift to an energy system that is based on 100% renewable energy. And this needs to be coupled with energy efficiency and the reduction of energy demand side, which should be really the basis for a transition to such a system. And the Fit for 55 package in this regard is currently really the opportunity to reduce emissions. In the next 10 years, actions are decisive to reach our, let's say, 1.5 degrees objective, to reach the to really live up to the Paris Agreement. And we think that the EU should strive to at least 65% greenhouse gas emission reductions by 2030 within the package. And that means for the Energy Efficiency Directive also quite considerable, let's say, an ambition level that goes beyond what has been proposed so far. We see that, and Mr. Constantinescu also already pointed out what the content of the EED recast proposal by the European Commission looks like, but I would like to, well, put this a bit into context. We have the war in Ukraine, which really revealed that we are dependent on energy imports, especially from fossil fuels. We have high energy prices. We have the problem of, well, ongoing wars, but also of inflation. The European Commission rightly already tried to tackle the dependence on Russian fossil fuels, and by reacting with the communication REPowerEU, really trying to make Europe independent from Russian fossil fuels. I think when the war started, there were some voices saying that we need to reduce the energy consumption as quickly as possible. It was presented as the answer to the crisis. Especially as this has been proven by experience as quite effective, looking at the oil crisis in the 70s. And indeed, I think we all agree on this, that energy efficiency measures that bring energy savings are part of the solution, and they are there to structurally really help the EU dependence from energy imports, and can enhance energy security, but also have quite a role in lifting households out of energy poverty. And the Energy Efficiency Directive proposal was a good step into the right direction, but now also we need to take into account that the context is different, and securing a higher energy efficiency target beyond what the Commission proposed originally is even more important now in the current context. And our own Paris-compatible energy scenario, the PAC scenario, shows that an energy efficiency target of at least 45% by 2030 is feasible. And what is needed, it's, of course, as an urgent plan, is to have immediate rollout of these transformational measures, but also of short-term measures that can help within the transitional period until the new Energy Efficiency Directive is in place. I would like to go a bit into data. I mean, now we have been looking at several graphs already, and I think what we can see from existing evaluations and preliminary data is that the efforts so far in meeting the energy efficiency targets for 2020 and 2030 has not been sufficient. And we can really say that if we wouldn't have the COVID crisis, the energy efficiency target, which was non-binding for 2020, would not have been met. On top of this, the planned national contributions for the existing 2030 target also do not sum up to meet the required energy savings in line with the target. So this really, I mean, this gap that has also been recognized by several policymakers really shows that we need a binding target, which has been rightly proposed by the Commission to make sure that we reach the EU target for 2030. I mean, the data on energy consumption do not only show why we need a binding target, but also why we need to increase the level of ambition. We can see that in the last 10 years, there has been progress, but the progress was really too little to make a substantial difference. And there was a study that was done by Fraunhofer ESI at looking at the economic potential of the energy efficiency target, saying that this is around 41% for final energy consumption and 45% for the technical potential. And of course, the study does not factor in higher energy prices. That could mean that cost-effective potential are even closer to the cost-effective potential that we could see now. I mean, where we have higher energy prices, options that were too costly before get now suddenly cost-effective. And on top of this, I mean, we really need this. I mean, we really can say that a higher target can tap into this potential that has been proven to be higher than what the Commission originally proposed. I mean, the higher target can enable the rollout of these transformational measures, and by making the energy efficiency more ambitious as a structural solution, we can at the same time, of course, also address the war and tackle the energy prices at the same time. I would like to close by saying that we need to have an immediate rollout of short-term measures that, and I'm repeating myself by saying that, that until the new EED is in place, can help us bridging this, let's say, this time frame until we have the new EED in place, probably in 2024 or later. And at the same time, we need to look really at the transformational measures such as deep renovation standards that are stronger for more efficient appliances, and also shifting to electric vehicles, etc. This is my contribution, and I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pax, for providing us with further context with regards to today's discussion, underlining the call for leadership at both EU but also international level when it comes to meeting the Paris Agreement targets, ensuring our strategic energy autonomy, but also reducing the EU's energy consumption. And on this note, I'm very happy to provide the floor to our next speaker, MEP Mr. Radan Kanev, who has been member of the European Parliament since 2019. Mr. Kanev is a member of the Committee on Employment and Social Affairs, but also the Committee on Petitions. Moreover, the rapporteur for the ENVI opinion on the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. So, Mr. Kanev, thank you very much for your kind interest and availability, as we're all very much looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the organization of the event. We are just starting very intensive work on the EPBD opinion in ENVI, and so it was most useful input from all the panelists till now. I'll try to keep really brief, and therefore I will not go for the obvious and not discuss what we obviously have consensus on, but start to point out the most problematic points that we have. So first of all, it is clear and undisputed, both from climate mitigation and social point of view, that we need more energy efficiency. Furthermore, during the present crisis with the aggression in the Ukraine, we face another obvious fact that it is very important from political and geopolitical point of view, something we often missed in the near past. Although I think the closer you live to Russia, the less you forget about it, but still it was not such a common knowledge even in our countries. I think the benefits are also clear and indisputed from all these points of view: social, climate and environment, and geopolitics and energy security, security of energy supply. But then where is the problem? I would say the problem is that we have a certain disbalance in social issues and in market implications of the changes that we need. And both are in one and the same direction. What we see for the moment on many and quite different European markets, starting from the quite well-to-do northwest of Europe and ending in the southeast, being far less poor and far less underdeveloped when it comes to climate policies. We see that usually middle class and upper middle class tend to use energy efficiency solutions, whereas the lesser the income, the lesser the impact of new technologies on everyday life. And here, I think it's not only a problem of incomes. It's not really a problem of public policy, but what we face is different market incentives of our population. Demand for better technologies, demand for energy efficiency technologies is much higher among well-to-do households and citizens. And since they have also far bigger investment options and free resources, then we see this huge imbalance, which is especially sensitive and especially visible in the less wealthy Eastern European countries. It is not that we don't have new tech solutions in Bulgaria, for example. We have it. But if we look at the market, we practically have it only among the upper middle class and really rich households. And here comes the big problem. How could we manage this market distortion? Could we simply instruct people with less incomes that there are better solutions for their family budget? And as center-right and rather liberal politician, my answer is obviously not. We need much more to incentivize people with less free resources, but who are much more, of course, impacted by energy poverty, to go on for new technology investments and for energy efficiency, especially in buildings, bearing in mind how expensive housing is in Europe and becomes more and more expensive, and how big a part the family budget, especially among low-income households, sustaining their housing, either owned or rented, represents. And here I would object to most of the speakers still now. And I would say I don't see a negative incentive such as carbon pricing playing any positive role for the near future, at least for one simple reason, which is we have so elevated prices now. Some use skyrocketing. I'm afraid that they have a lot more to skyrocket in the months to come. So maybe what we see now is not skyrocketing even. So we have the strongest possible negative incentive already in place. And having both quite a long personal experience in the 90s of being a person in energy poverty, as everyone in Bulgaria back then, so nothing special about myself, but working in Bulgaria for so many years, I would also argue that negative incentives usually don't work with really poor people. They work with low middle class, maybe yes, but with elderly people, with extremely low pensions, working in small and isolated places, negative incentives don't work. They lead only to frustration or even existential depression. So what we really need is to go for the positive incentives to show how much cheaper new technologies could be, and there the public policies have quite an impact, and I would say something more. There are very easy solutions which are definitely in the competence of public authorities, whereas market management is generally considered risky when it's performed by the government. But what new energy solutions need the most is basic stability. So it comes to grids, internal installations in building, grid balance, and freedom to provide, especially solar power in the south of Europe, which is generally less well-to-do than the north. So there is plenty of space for very strong policies which are inherent to public authorities and not kind of artificial to them. And I think there is where we really need to start very, very urgently in order to meet the goals of EPBD, EED, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kanev, for your remarks, as it has been very much appreciated hearing from you as the ENVI rapporteur for the specific file for EPBD. And then just before providing the floor to Mr. Kokkalis for his closing remarks, I noticed that speakers have already written down the replies with regards to some questions posed. So thank you very much for covering this. If I may very quickly pick on one question that hasn't been addressed, and I think this is targeting Professor Nakhichenovits. I will just read this out loud. It says, what would be then the key challenges for implementing your recommendations for an EU policy cycle perspective, as there might be difficult to translate into actual policies?
Thank you very much. This is, of course, a tough question, especially for an academic, not a practitioner. But I would argue, and we say that in the scientific opinion, the coordination of the policies is central. And I think that also refers to the last point, negative and positive incentives. These need to be coordinated. Clearly, low-income people need positive incentives, and we suggested also that there should be transfer payments from the carbon pricing. But coming back to this issue, the combination of policies is key to achieve the synergies and not to have too many conflicts and trade-offs. I think this is our problem. The second one I would like to suggest, even though it might not be realistic, is that policies need to have some kind of a long-term commitment so that we, as consumers, as citizens, can plan our future activities, because we are in this for the long haul. The Fit for 55 says climate neutrality by 2050, so we have 28 years. Therefore, that would be my personal opinion, how to make this a little bit more practical. I hope this is a useful response to the important question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Nekicenovic. And on this note, I'm happy to then provide the floor to MEP Mr. Petros Kokkalis for his closing remarks of today's event. Mr. Kokkalis has been a member of the European Parliament from Greece since 2019, and under the umbrella of the Intergroup also holds the position of chair of the Working Group on Sustainable Development Goals, and of course is inter alia a key member of the Committee on Environment, Public Health and Food Safety. So Mr. Kokkalis, thank you very much for being with us today, and the floor is yours for wrapping up today's event.
Thank you very much, Elias, and thank you everyone for this discussion today. I'm also the shadow rapporteur for the left on the Energy Efficiency Directive, as well as the shadow rapporteur on the Social Climate Fund, which is a very relevant file as well. So, well, my remark is that we should be a lot more bolder and recognize things for what they are. I don't think that energy efficiency is the issue. The issue is energy inefficiency. The issue is energy waste. We have a wasteful system which was not designed for the needs we have today, and we need to urgently reduce our waste. This waste is now not coming at the cost of social inequality. It's also coming at the cost of blood and political blackmail. So this is a critical point where we need to do more. We need to do it fast. And we spoke a lot about innovation. I think the financial opportunity is clear. I think the technological progress is clear. It is now up to policy and political innovation. We need to do it with speed. We need to do it with cohesion and provide a holistic policy to break out of the silo that we have been using in our policy. And we need to have higher ambition. In the REPowerEU, the Commission rightly invites the co-legislators to hire for higher ambition in terms of targets and earlier dates. And we should deliver that. I think that the draft report that has been prepared, at least at the end committee, by the rapporteur is very good, as well as in the ITRE committee. And also, you know, I followed all the science of the background, which really boiled down to a humanities argument. It boiled down to the need for policies politics that will deliver systemic change and very fast. So I think that the key of the point here is to deliver a just transition, to make sure that we invest in a way that we provide access to the public, to clean energy, to safe and healthy homes, and to clean public transportation as well in this process. So this is, like it was said a lot times, about justice, and justice is about equity. We should recognize the carbon inequity in our societies and be very careful with the negative incentives, which I agree with Mr. Kadev that they are not going to work in the poorer section. So now we have all the instruments. We have a monumental recovery and resilience facility, and we have the opportunity to make the choice now and invest in the poorer. So we should go for at least 45%. We should have binding national targets. We should increase the annual energy savings rating. We should support the requirement for the public sector to reduce its energy demand. And in general, we have to be faster and bolder. I think that despite the great innovation that's happening, we do have right now most of the instruments that we need to go forward in this transformation. And thank you for this very interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokkalis, for your vision and also for calling for more ambition when it comes to transforming the entire European energy system, which, of course, as highlighted, must be done in a socially equitable way. On behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, I would like to once again thank you for providing us your key takeaways, summing up today's discussion so very much to the point via your intervention, which wraps up our online event for today. At the same time, a warm thanks goes out to all speakers and attendees of today's webinar for addressing a science advice perspective for energy efficiency. So on behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, we're very much looking forward to continuing the discussion in the near future. Until then, thank you very much once again for joining us today. Stay safe and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.